Welcome to Leadership and People. This is a series that pulls back the curtain on leadership by interviewing CEOs, senior executives, and entrepreneurs who have had large exits. We ask these experts about how they built trusted networks to rapidly grow their companies and what advice they wish they knew if they could do it all again. This is part 2 of our interview with Nathan Anderson.
If you really don't enjoy what you do, you're probably not producing to the levels that you could. You're not adding the value that you could. And you're spending time doing things you don't want to. And I think at that point in time, it's time to find something else. I mean, take a look around. Our unemployment across the country is really at historical low levels. There are plenty of opportunities to gain different education and to look for different opportunities.
If you missed part 1, had some really good stuff that you should be listening to. And we're actually just going to pick right up from there. You know, we talked a lot about this idea of consistency and that daily reminder, kind of following the Ritz Carlton model and adapting it for the finance industry. But something else you brought up a few times I want to ask about, this idea of having the rest of your senior leaders bought into this so they can set the example for it. You talked quite a bit about coaching and mentoring. When you do find that there is a leader that it's you know, you're coming to the conclusion they haven't quite bought in, you know, they're going through the motions, but like they probably aren't feeling it in the bones, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about what you've done or what your advice is for, you know, what does that one-on-one coaching and mentoring look like in helping them open that aperture and really, because just telling them to buy in, I'm guessing, isn't enough.
Yeah. So for me, I think it's whether it's culture, something you're trying to move there, or something related to another aspect of the business. I don't know that it's any different, right? For me, I think it's key first and foremost to have a frank conversation, you know, to really just sit down and say, hey, you know, I've noticed from your behavior that whatever it is you're speaking about, that you're not really bought into. Let's talk about that. Let's discuss, you know, your reservation or your hesitancy or what's going on here. I think it's extremely important to give people that opportunity. If your culture is such that everybody's sharing their opinions all the time, that's great. I haven't found a culture like that yet. So I think it's important to provide an avenue for people to share that type of an input and ask those frank questions. And, you know, at that point, you have a number of different options, right, based upon their response. And for me, it's great to have the discussion, but the outcome of the discussion is what's most important. So really being able to, from that, take steps as a team, the two of you, to where you need to go is key. And those steps, it could be a number of different things.
Yeah. What would be an example? So if they say, oh, Nathan, I know I should, and like, it's great, but I got to get real work done.
Yeah. So in that scenario, for me, it'd be really simple to say, well, you know, I'm sorry to hear that. I agree. I think everybody here has a lot of quote unquote real work to do. But I think it would be, again, going back to helping them understand the why. In this case, maybe sharing with them some of the results of what's happened in the areas that have done that. And then also, lastly, helping them understand that this is an expectation of the organization. As a leader of the organization, you're either in or you're out, and that's really pertains to all aspects of your role. Not only the quote unquote work that you're talking about within your specific organization, but also the leadership role you have within the company and supporting the expectations we have as an organization. You know, I've learned throughout my career that you do need to have support. Doesn't mean everybody's going to have the same thought, right? That's okay. That's actually, in my opinion, that's preferred. You bring people from different backgrounds together on a team, and everybody's bringing their own experiences, and I would hope that they're going to have a difference of thought. But once a decision's made as a leadership team, it's then important and incumbent upon everybody there to support it and help it move forward. And that, to me, is part of their role as a leader. And if they don't want that role, then it's time to find somebody else that does.
So in today's culture, with a lot of emphasis on being nice and everybody gets a turn, and you know, there's kind of this pervading, like, you know, wanting leadership to move away from being drill sergeant dictators, that maybe has sometimes the tug of war has gone too far the other direction. Any thoughts for folks who are saying, like, well, I don't want them to feel bad, or, you know, like, maybe we can work with him over time. I don't need, I don't know if I need to be that direct. Um, can you talk about like the value in being clear, and then like the organization having standards that is not just up for personal opinion?
Yeah, that's a great point. And again, by no means as a company are we perfect at that. I think people struggle with that all the time. So what I would say is this: you used a word there a minute ago. You said value, and I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. If I'm have the opportunity to work with you, and I see an opportunity for improvement or growth or development, then I'm going to sit down with you and have that conversation because I care about you as an individual. And if I'm nice and I don't have that conversation, then do I really care? Am I really adding value to you as an employee? I would argue that no, you're not. Life's too short for all of us to be doing something that we're not doing well. And I think it's really important for leaders to lead. And the way they lead is to provide that feedback, to set an expectation, and to allow people to surpass that expectation. If it's never been set, they never know. If we don't sit down and share with them the concerns we have or opportunities they may have, they're never going to get better. And so I think on the other side of the coin, if you look at it, if you really do care about the individual, your goal should be to help them succeed and grow and develop. And if that's not occurring, then you're not doing your job as a leader. And in most cases, this is one of the things I've shared with the leaders in our company. That's their number one job, is to help develop, lead, and mentor their teams. Those individuals will most likely be here long beyond they will. And they have an opportunity to go ahead and impact the organization in a much bigger way if they're helping those people develop. And you can't do that unless you're willing to have the tough conversations sometimes. And you use the word nice. I don't think you have to be mean. I would say that it's not nice to sit back and not share feedback when it's needed.
Yeah. Makes me think about one of my early failings. Before running this company, I used to be in finance, and I was a young CEO, and we had hired this guy, it was a huge salary to us, $300,000 a year coming out of a national bank. Right. And, I ended up giving the guy so much rope, he hung himself with it, and I kept just saying, well, he'll get around to it. And I think maybe like my shying away from conflict or whatever, just, it was not very many months down the road. It was just so obvious it wasn't going to work out. Right. And there was a lesson of, hire slowly, fire quickly, which I messed up. But the other one of like not having real conversations with him about like, hey, so this is the role you've been hired for, and it's not happening. Instead of, I just kept letting him, oh, I'm sure he'll get, I'm sure. And we'd have these conversations, and he'd be like, no, I'm going to get to it, whatever. But I never had like the direct, yeah, but you didn't do it. So we probably need a different plan than what's happened last month because it didn't happen, right? And I don't know if it was like, again, just because I was trying to avoid conflict or what these other things were, but it ended up not being nice to him to give him a pass because he ended up losing his job over it.
Yeah, I think that, there's caring about the outcome and there's caring about the individual. And oftentimes we care way too much about one and not enough about the other. When in essence, if you care about the individual, you're most likely going to get the desired outcome. So again, going back to the terminology that was used, if you value them and want to demonstrate that value, you'll have those conversations. You'll put a plan in place. You'll help them understand what the expectation is. And then it's great. It's a great opportunity to recognize, to reward when they're able to meet those expectations. But it's really I think an expectation of the leader to make sure that employee has that opportunity.
Yeah. I think the other one for me in that scenario too was probably some self-focus. Like I wanted the Boy Scout badge of being the nice boss. And I knew if I had the conversation as direct as I probably needed to, then maybe he wouldn't be giving me the nice boss badge anymore. Right.
Yeah, right.
And so being more worried about my image than his results and the organization's results wasted a bunch of our fund's money and his time and our time and all sorts of all sorts of awesomeness.
Got a great lesson out of it, though, right?
Right. Yeah. Now I've got content for a podcast. Okay. So let's go back to this coaching and mentoring thing. It sounds like this is not a once a year thing for you. This is a practice you believe in.
Yeah, it really is. It's ongoing. I mean, and again, it should be happening throughout an entire organization. I could take the opportunity personally to meet with our CEO and have those conversations for myself as well. I think coaching and mentoring is a two-way street. I think the individual has to take the ownership on themselves to reach out to their boss or whoever it is they're choosing as a mentor to let them know, hey, I'd like your assistance. Here's the things I'd like help with. And then, of course, if you're a leader in an organization and have direct reports, it's your responsibility, in my opinion, as well, to make sure that you're leading them appropriately. Not every leader is going to be a mentor, but they need to lead. And I think that, again, that's not a one-time thing. It's not an annual thing. It's an ongoing thing. And it has to occur regularly. Otherwise, it isn't genuine. It's rehearsed. It's not, that value or that desire that they have to help individuals around them grow and develop.
Everybody hears it in the business media that this should work and that great organizations do this and whatever, right? What would your response be if somebody came back to you and they said, but Nathan, you don't understand how much work I have to do. The company does the annual reviews and I talk to him, it's not like I don't talk to him, but you understand how much work I have to do. I just don't have time for that kind of, to do it that regular.
Yeah. I think just like anything else, it has to be important enough to be on your calendar. If you don't schedule time to do one-on-ones, if you don't schedule time to meet together to talk about development, it won't happen. I guarantee people schedule meetings to talk about financials. They schedule meetings to talk about product development or whatever, right? We schedule those types of things all the time. It's the human element, the human resource side of things that we, for whatever reason, choose not to schedule and make a priority. So I think at the end of the day, we all have the same amount of time in a day. It comes back to what we prioritize, and our actions will show what we prioritize. So if it is in your mind important to you, then you have to look at your calendar, you have to send out a meeting invite, and you have to schedule it. Once you do that, those excuses tend to go away.
It's funny what a simple answer that is, and yet how many of us don't do it, right? Well, whether it's about this subject or another subject, what's another one of the just leadership principles that you feel like has had you, come to the level you've got to in your career and help the organization get to the size it's got?
I would say this, and it might sound trite or cliche, but I think you have to be really bought into doing what and enjoying what you do. So for me, again, at the role that I have here at working at Mountain America Credit Union, I love what we do. I love that we're member owned. I love that our focus is on the member and our goals are to help them, and our vision really to help them achieve their financial dreams. Because I love that, I can put more of myself into my job. And I think that we all need to be able to look at what we do that way. No job's perfect. There are a lot of things we all would like to change in our jobs, whether it's the role itself or the company or whatever else. But I think if we can look at the heart of what it is that we do and enjoy it, then for me, that makes a significant difference.
So let's play with this for a minute. I'm a senior leader in a government organization, in a whatever industry I'm in.
Yeah.
And it pays well, and I don't have time to go back to school. And maybe I'm realizing that I don't love it the way Nathan sounds like he loves it, right? Any tips for finding what I can love about it, of maybe developing a little bit of that in me so I can kind of bring that passion back now that I'm leading the organization?
Right. So I would go back and look at what it is you're doing or what it is you think you're doing. And I say that because those are two different things. So if I looked at my role and said, well, I'm over operations, so I'm a process guy. I'm going to focus on processes. I think what you find is you have to really take a step back and understand, what does that mean? For me, my background was sales and marketing, and now I am over operations. You look at those two and say, wow, those are very different. And I would look at it and say, well, no, they're really not. It's actually working with people to make a difference. So I think you have to step back and say, well, what is it you don't enjoy about your job? What is it that you're doing? And are you focusing on the wrong things? Because if you, for instance, if you like process and you like efficiency and you don't like people, well, then maybe you should look for a different role, whether it's that company or a different company. I would say in most roles that we have, we should be people focused. We should have the desire to work with and work through people. And I think regardless of the industry, you can find ways to make it meaningful and to enjoy it. And if you don't, I don't care if you have progressed to a certain point, you should still look for something different. Like I said, my feeling is that life's too short. We all work for a number of reasons. One, of course, is to provide an income or a living, and that's important. But I still feel that if you really don't enjoy what you do, you're probably not producing to the levels that you could. You're not adding the value that you could. And you're spending time doing things you don't want to. And I think at that point in time, it's time to find something else. I mean, take a look around. Our unemployment across the country is really at historical low levels. There are plenty of opportunities to gain different education and to look for different opportunities to go ahead and grow a career. So I personally think that, again, because life's too short, if that's the case that you find yourself in, you should look for something different.
It's funny that short-term pain, long-term gain from doing something like that, right? Because it's inconvenient, it can be scary, whatever, right?
Yep.
You talk about operations and people. I've been learning lately, a lot of folks in the finance world are taking kind of the operational excellence, continuous improvement methodologies and bringing them to the finance world. When you think about making things better in operations, whether you're doing that, formal CI programs or not, any thoughts about getting the people to, A, are you doing stuff like that? B, how do you get people to want to do stuff like that?
Yeah, so there are three things that I focus on this year and have in the past as well. But the first for us is providing a great experience. So that's customer service, member service, however you want to look at it. And that is number one here and will always be number one. The second thing is a little bit of what you're talking about, but we phrase it differently. We don't say process improvement. We say we want to make it easier for our members to do business with us. And when you look at it, again, from the lens of the member or the customer, it's not process improvement. It's making it so that your consumer, your member, can accomplish whatever it is they're trying to do easier. And so the steps to do that, it may make it easier for your employees as well, right? But it's really, I think, looking at it from a different lens. And when you do that, it changes the perspective of the employees that are trying to make it happen.
I love that idea of building the framing right into the title, right? How much less work is it to get buy-in when you've framed the whole thing, like you say, this perspective that staff are naturally going to care about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's much easier that way.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate how much time you spent with us. It's been great. Maybe to close, what would be a piece of advice that you'd go back and give a younger self, when it comes to leadership and all this people stuff? What's something that maybe you wish you would have learned earlier or something?
Probably this, work or a career, however you want to, short-term, long-term, you want to look at it. I don't think it ever should be something that you're getting through. I would say this, with every role I've had, there's been many things I could learn. And I would just say that it's important in every role to just be a sponge, soak it up, learn as much as you can, not only about your current role, but about the way that things are working around you. I've been fortunate and privileged to have a lot of different roles in my career. And I think that I would tell myself to spend even more time learning along the way, because I think with that education, you develop and become better.
Love it. Okay. Well, this has been great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Logan Wilkes and I'm the CEO of Corporate Alliance. A few years ago, I moved to San Diego to build a new market for us there. The biggest deterrent I had to success was I didn't know a soul. I often thought to myself, if I just had a thriving network or influence, this would go 100 times faster. To be honest with you, I had never felt so alone in my life because A, I didn't have an influence, and B, I didn't know anyone that was going through the same thing that I was. If you have ever felt like this and you are looking to grow your influence, join us at one of our upcoming events. You can check us out at corporatealliance.net and request an invite to one of our upcoming experiences.